Ago when I was like 21, I invested in one of my first mentors and decided that, business coaching was the route that I really wanted to take because realistically, Zara.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome to episode 4 of our podcast. Today I'm with Kendall Strampel, my close friend, mentor, and just one of the best people on this entire planet. But Kendall, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. What's up? My name is Kendall Strampel. Thank you for the intro, by the way. Mario is also one of the most incredible people. So I am a business coach and a fitness coach, live here in San Diego. Met Mario earlier this year, March? Wow. But I've lived here in San Diego for about 5 years now. So when I was 18, I was in college. I decided just was not for me, like most people honestly here. And I pretty much, started off in the fitness space. I had an eating disorder throughout high school, and I recognized that was not the path I wanted anybody else to take. And because of that, I really got into the world of fitness. So I actually had a really good friend who was into bodybuilding, got me into competing, which after an eating disorder probably wasn't the best route to take, but was still super resilient, and I decided I didn't really want to be told what to do. And, being 18, kind of a little bit rebellious, very unemployable, I decided I was like, I'm leaving. I'm heading out of here. I lived in Pennsylvania with my parents, got a personal training job down in Florida, and then decided to hop in the world of online coaching, which honestly wasn't really, that big of a thing back then. But I was super young and I just made really radical ballsy decisions that I look back at myself, I'm like, I have no idea how I did that back then. But yeah, so landed myself out here in San Diego, met some really awesome people. I actually lived up in LA for a little bit first, and then took off with my coaching business. It was super accidental. I just didn't really plan on doing it. I didn't think it would get to the place that it's, at now. And about 2 years ago when I was 21, I hopped into the world of online business coaching because I knew that it was something that I know it's pretty innovative. I knew that I was creating systems because there weren't as many business coaches back then. And I decided I had to take initiative. I had built up and done a lot of guesswork, and I was it took me a long time, so I decided to really hop into the world of business coaching. So now it's pretty cool. We have the agencies where we help business coaches outsource. We have business coaching, and then we have 2 different programs through fitness coaching as well. So landed me here. I have awesome friends, live here in San Diego, obviously Mario, you being one of them. And long story short, I guess it's kind of where I'm at. So
I remember you saying that you stumbled upon this on Instagram. It was just kind of accidental. You were just kind of sharing your story with your eating disorder, and very quickly you had people following you, resonating with you, and eventually reaching out for help. I mean, that started back in when you were 16, 17?
Yeah, so kind of backpedaling, I actually had Instagram in 2012. So I was 14 years old, and it actually perpetuated my eating disorder, believe it or not. I was getting on Instagram and I was following a lot of the competitors. I noticed people were eating tilapia, asparagus, and I was wow, those girls are jacked. I want to look like that. I was I want to look like that. But didn't realize they had gone through a whole off season, all that stuff. So I was on Instagram for about 2 years. 16, my parents found out. And that's when I was right in the middle of my eating disorder. And they were that's it. We're cutting you off. They found out about my Instagram, took my phone, everything, gym membership. They're we're putting an end to this. Long story short, I obviously went through a really big battle with recovery. And when I was 17, about to turn 18, I was you know what, I'm reactivating this account. I'm old enough. I'll be 18 in a few months. My parents can't do anything about it, just super rebellious. And started documenting my fitness journey on there, and mainly my recovery, to be honest with you. But I mean, I grew up on Instagram pretty much. People watched me from when I had, started my recovery journey to becoming a PT. So yeah, so it's kind of funny. It went both ways with
and
social
it's
media.
Awesome because a lot of the people we're friends with now or that you work with now actually have been following you from the very beginning. Francis, Nico, they were all following you back in 2016, 2017, which is nuts when I think about it. But in the span of 5 years, you went from, you're recovering from your eating disorder, you're still trying to figure everything out, to moving out to a whole different state, having a whole different life, owning your fitness business, and then eventually coaching other fitness coaches on how to run their business. So in that 5 year span, life completely flipped around probably 10 different times. How is it, and I know we've talked about this before, just having this chip on your shoulder, how is it being a younger person in the industry trying to build that authority up and just continuing to just build this empire that you're building, how do you kind of like maintain all that? Because it has to be tough, right?
Yeah, and like I look back now, I literally have like goosebumps. I like look back now at like I didn't get those like college years. I didn't get to like go out. Like I didn't get shit faced with my friends. Like I didn't do any of that stuff. Like from age 18 to I would honestly say like even 22, like just last year, I like honestly until I met you guys, like I really hadn't had a friend group or like honestly even friends out here where like I would go out or like I would go do the things that like a normal like 18 to like 21-year-old would do. And it was definitely hard being in the space because you think about the first thing is like ageism, that's real, you know, and then you think about credibility. Like the credibility factor is stripped of you when you're that young. And so I did kind of have the chip on my shoulder. I'm not going to lie, where I was like, yeah, I'm 18 and I'm doing this. Like at first it was something that I would always talk about. Then I recognized like the credibility factor for me was like, hey, I need to like use good voice. I need to use diction. I need to show people I'm educated, especially like hopping into the world of business coaching, like right around the age of 21. I was like, damn, there are like 30, 35-year-old, 40-year-old business coaches out there who have had years of experience. So I had to figure out what really set me apart and what made me different. But I think the biggest thing was just like, almost having a suppressed like reality of who I was because I had to almost kind of change my facade or like how I would like or change, you know, my presence on social just to like have people give me that credibility in the beginning. And I think even to this day sometimes, you know, it definitely still comes up, but it was just hard because I didn't have that like typical like growing up, you know, like I didn't grow up like the normal like 18 to 21-year-old.
So my question to you is, and I'm kind of feeling this as well because, you know, since I started running the last 5 back in August, September, and the first year has been all about just building credibility and showing people that I, you know, have the skills, the knowledge to actually help them. When you were going through that like process, did you feel like you're being your complete authentic self? Because that's something I'm barely tapping into. And I'm like, I want to start showing my complete authentic self. And I want to stop like having this forced feeling of I got to show that I'm the expert. I got to show that, you know, I'm credible. I have to like build something up. And now I feel like it's just time to, you know, just be my authentic self, like show who I am on social media. And it's kind of where I'm struggling right now. Did you feel the same way when in that process?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I actually recently have talked about so many people like this, and it's not even just an age thing. It's like when you look at the world of coaching and you look at like what social media is nowadays, like a lot of people are small businesses, right? And so I see people trying to show up like super professionally, like always like, you know, using this specific terminology or like having to have a really clear cut like business page with like copywriting, all that kind of stuff, and like the way they talk, the mannerisms that they use. And I thought to myself, like, this is why I was like, I want to step into the world of business coaching because I'm a goofball, like, you know that. Like, I'm crazy half the time, like even when I show up on group calls and things like that. And I think it's kind of what sets like our program apart a little bit. And also when I was younger, I realized like it actually did almost become a little bit of my identity. Like it wasn't that I felt inauthentic, but I was like, oh, like this is me growing up. Like this is actually part of like who I am. And I think I just started really embracing that too, because like I realized like what is authenticity, right? It's like who you are as a person. I was like, well, I'm still becoming. I didn't know who I was. I was 18, like most people don't, you know? And I think for me, it was a lot of like, that's why when I was starting off on social, like mainly all I did in terms of education was like, I just showed people my life and like what I was doing, where I was moving, when I bought my properties, like all that stuff. I just showed people because I was like, okay, this is me growing up online. The only way for me to feel super organic and authentic is just by showing my life and then utilizing that to teach people, you know, whether I was like reverse dieting or if I was cutting or if I was like moving or starting a business. I think for me, I did feel pretty authentic in the sense that like it was just me showing my life, you know, more than anything. But there were definitely days where I was like, damn, this is hard. Like I wish I could go back to school or like, you know, be quote unquote like normal. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I always have felt really authentic online, but there are definitely times where I feel like, oh, I need to always be educating or I need to like show up a certain way for people to give me credibility. And I think it's only become about more recently, honestly, as like a business coach, you know, rather than starting with fitness coaching. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's hard not to identify with your business either, you know.
And I think that's what really does separate FTF because I mean, before I even signed with you, I was looking at multiple other like business coaches. I'm like, okay, I think it's ready for that next step. I got to do something if I really want to take my business to the next level. And that's something I realized really quickly. It's like all these other businesses, it seemed like, yeah, they can get you results. I mean, I hope any business coach is able to.
Right.
But everything was just like really robotic. And I was just like, damn, okay, is there anything that's going to make me feel at home? And then just talking to you the first time, I remember we were at Shore Club, and you were explaining everything. I'm just like, okay, when do I start, dude?
Yeah, dude.
Can we start tomorrow?
Yeah. I think that's the funny part too, is like, you know, any form of coaching is such a huge part of your life. Like, it has the opportunity to completely transform you. If it's fitness coaching, business coaching, like life coaching, whatever it is, like, you need to be able to, you know, see the personality behind that person and like feel at home with them. Like you said, like feeling at home is super important. And like, I think for me, like, that's why I always say, like, I want to mobilize our generation, is like, I want to mobilize our generation in a way that's not traditional. Like, you don't have to go to school. Like, we're so stuck to all of these like supposed to's in society. And like, it's as simple as like your body, right? Like, what you're doing with your life. Like, are you going to school? Are you getting a degree? Like, are you with the perfect partner? Like, there's so many supposed to's. And I think when I stopped living for the supposed to's, I was like, okay, this is where my life is like really starting to get enjoyable. Like, I'm attracting really dope friends, like, you know, clients, like, etc. And I think like a lot of people might deem it in a way sometimes as like, oh, like they maybe just don't have as much credibility because they have fun. But I'm like, why can't you like work hard and play hard, you know? And I think that's the thing that's just really important, is like, it's so draining trying to act like a supposed to or be like a supposed to all of the time, you know? And energetically, I burnt out. And I think I've told you this before, in like 2019, where I was just like stepping into the world of business coaching, kind of felt like a fraud because I was like wearing these like blazers and like business attire, and I was like, this is not me. Like, this isn't me. Like, I don't dress like this, I don't wear this, I don't talk like this. And I thought I had to, because that's what all the other business coaches were doing. And when I stopped doing that shit, like, my life was like, boom, it was like in alignment so much quicker.
It's huge that you say that, because that's something that I'm still trying to really detach from, especially, you know, just being in a year into business. Like, I'm still a baby. Like, when I really think about it, like the grand scheme of things, or just like the timeline, year one, like there's so many years to come, and just trying to do it as early as possible, really separating yourself from those supposed to's and expectations, and just really, Chad says it all the time, you say all the time, is just like really moving with your heart and just aligning your commitments with your work. And if that aligns with your heart as well, like, it doesn't matter what you choose or what decisions you make, like everything's going to unfold in the way that you want it to. And I don't think you can really do that until you start doing the inner work that we've talked about. And it's great because all of our friends are doing it, and you see how much healing is going on in the short time we've known each other too. We've not even a full year that we've all been hanging out and knowing each other, and we've seen each other just develop and evolve as human beings, which has been freaking awesome. But it's also why we sync up so nicely, because we are all constantly like looking inwards and figuring out, okay, how can we better ourselves? And I don't know, really detaching from those supposed to's and seeing like, okay, who do I want to be? Like, who's Mario? Who's my authentic self? You know, how am I going to be happy? What do I need to be happy? It's different. You know, growing up, I didn't think this was like a pillar that I had to put too much focus on. And even getting into business, I didn't think there was going to be such a strong pillar that I had to focus on. And once I had every other pillar kind of focused and worked on, I realized that this pillar was just so neglected. I didn't put any emphasis on it. So now that I am, it's been draining, but it's definitely been life-changing. Like, you see yourself in the world from a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much I could like, oh man, this topic, like, it's so crazy to me, because I think this year for all of us, and especially in our friend group, is like, one, we have like some of the most accepting friends ever. And like, all I can say is to anybody listening, like, you know, when you have a good friend group, when you say to yourself like, okay, I am being myself, and like everyone is just radically accepting. Like, when you feel like you're trying to fit yourself into a box around other people, like, it's so funny, like even new people, when they come to our group, they're kind of like, why you guys just like love us so easily? It's like the love is unconditional. As long as you are working on yourself and like putting in the work, like, you're gonna attract those people. And like, we're super fortunate to live here and put ourselves around people like that. But at the same time, none of us are from here. Like, we all came here because we knew we wanted people who were like us and who were doing the work, right? And I think the biggest thing I probably learned this year, and I'm sure it kind of holds true for you too, is like, when you start doing the work, right, not only are you finding out what your past traumas are and like learning from those and unlearning, because I feel like adulthood is like straight up just all unlearning. Like I made some of the worst decisions ever when I was like 18 and 19 in my business, like ethically and like morally. And I look back and I was like, I was really just becoming, like I just didn't know what I was doing. And I also wasn't as self-aware. And this is something that I've just studied and like read into so much this year is like, you know, I'm so big on like emotional intelligence. And I think the thing is like when you're more self-aware, like that's when you realize like, maybe I'm trying to fit in right now. Maybe I'm trying to do something else. Like maybe I'm just like putting myself in this box. And I think for me, when I was more self-aware, we literally had a conversation about this just like not that long ago, is like you realize when people are internalizing things and when they're projecting them onto you, and you realize like when they need to do the work too, and you give them a cushion and you give them love and you give them support, but it's like, hey, go do the work, you know? And I think you can only really be your authentic self when you start focusing on that self-awareness and when you start becoming more self-aware. And it's hard too, because if you don't have people around you checking you or like accountability partners, that also can be, you know, really tough, which is why I'm just like so grateful for our friends, because everyone is more self-aware and aware of others too.
Yeah, and it's how we stay so aligned with each other. Everybody's kind of on the same page. It doesn't matter what's going on or where everybody's at, as long as like you know that they're doing the work and doing what they have to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Like everybody just lines up and everybody's in sync, and I think that's when we all hang out and it just feels so right. You know, everything just runs so smoothly. When we went to Lost Lines, everything was just so smooth. When we hang out, so smooth, and you're able to pick up exactly. And it's frustrating too. It's frustrating when you catch yourself like really projecting and you're just like, okay, why am I doing this? Okay, I know why I'm doing this, but I'm still gonna do it. And then you're frustrated yourself because you follow through with it. But Far really speaks about this. He says you don't have to change it. You can't change it. You are always it's gonna happen. It's gonna slip up. You just have to be okay with it and just learn from it, and then just better it next time around. You have to still love yourself and accept yourself for, you know, who you are. And it sounds a lot easier said than done, but it takes a lot of work, and it's just a never ending process. So although like you got to work on yourself spiritually, financially, physically, and just mentally, I've always called those my 4 pillars. Like I'm telling you, the spiritual pillar was always just neglected. Like it was just out the door. Yeah. And it's no wonder my building was never sturdy. Something was always going right, but something was always going wrong. And it wasn't until, you know, spiritually, like things started lining up a whole lot more. And I'm like, okay, a lot more work needs to get done here. So it's something that I don't think a lot of people tap into. I mean, it's barely being considered a science like recently, but especially younger people. I mean, I really hope that this really starts to blow up within the next couple of years, because I can think about like the people that I truly care about that, you know, I'm maybe not as close to now, that can really benefit from doing the inner work, because the way it's changed my life, I just wanted to change other people's lives.
Yeah, I think it's also like generational. Like if you look at like the older generations, it's like you wonder why it's so suppressed amongst the young people. Like, you know, I look at like my parents and it's one of those things that like freaking adore them. But like if I tell them I'm doing the work, or if you look at older generations, a lot of times they're like, oh, that's stupid, or like, oh, I don't believe in that, or like there's so many stigmas around like therapy and like just journaling literally in the morning, manifestation, like all those things. Like I used to literally, I remember I had my first mentor, she's NLP certified. She like focuses on a lot of mindset work. And I just used to tell myself like, that's woo woo. And if you hear someone say like, that's woo woo, like 99% of the time it's like, oh, you are so averse to doing the work. Like I think about myself even this time last year. And I remember just thinking to myself, it's like even Nick, my boyfriend, he's like, you know, Mario, obviously really good friends with him, but like him getting into like meditation this year and like him getting into journaling and like morning routines. And I was just like, oh gosh, like we're going down that road. Like, I don't know if that's the work I was thinking about. And then seeing the growth, I'm just like, wow, like I want what he's having. Yeah. Like, why is he so woke? Why is he so happy all the time? And like, I think generationally, like we have to think about it now and set our future generation up for that, because that's probably a lot of the reason why I was so averse to it, is because like I wasn't brought up being told that I was allowed to have those feelings or have those emotions or think inwardly, you know? And I think that's a big part of the problem of why a lot of people don't want to do the work, you know? And I think we have to just make it be more aware that it's like, hey, doing this at a young age, like we're an anomaly, you know, but it's just like we're around it all the time. So it feels normal for us to do that work. But I feel like for a lot of people out there, it doesn't, because they're suppressed or they're made fun of, or it's woo-woo if they do the work, you know? And I think that's something that we just have to work towards actively constantly just putting out there.
Yeah, because if we are the, just the sum or the results of just of all of our past traumas and conditionings, you really think like, is there any way that we can't, push any type of traumas onto our kids? And like, you really can't. Like, we are going to push something onto them, but the more self-aware we become and the better we are about like really just knowing why we do everything and then just pushing the right things onto our children, the better off they're going to be. Because we look at our parents and, okay, I'm this way because you guys were this way, but they did zero work, like nothing. So if we want to pass down anything to our kids, is we want to make sure that we're the best way possible, or like we are setting up the best examples possible. Because I just this year, and I can't imagine like how much more work I do. I really feel like I'm just scratching the surface of things, but it makes me really think about having a family. And one of my biggest goals in life is to have a family, is to have 2-3 kids, is to have a dog, is to just be something really chill where I can just take care of my kids. But I really think I'm like, okay, if I had a kid now versus if I had a kid 30 and 10 years of doing work, it's going to be a big difference on, how much more blessed these kids are going to be. So it makes me want to just work harder and be able to provide a whole lot more than just, physical resources, more than just like, okay, a roof over our heads and just a nice place, but really being able to pass down like something so much greater. And I don't know, it's something I didn't think about like years ago, and it's something that's my main focus now. So it's crazy how you have that shift.
Yeah, for myself too, it's like as of recently, even in like client scenarios, or like, if there are any coaches listening out there, like for so long I just like didn't know how to handle it with other people. And like I would even project onto other people sometimes. And we're all humans, like we're still gonna do it, but I think learning about my ego and like learning about these things, and like also learning about my childhood, even though I had a really good childhood, like no matter what, like there's always gonna be something that's come up. And the big thing too is like, while we're working through past traumas, there are still traumas that have yet to come. And it's like, dang, at least now the biggest thing I'll say, and if there's like the biggest takeaway I will say, is like preventative action. Like I learned this from my good friend Sean McDevitt. I did a podcast with him a few weeks ago, and like he talked to me about this, and he said, going to therapy is not always because you need to like, work through past things. It's also so that you have a toolkit prepared for when you walk into scenarios and situations in the future to know how to better manage them and communicate through them. Because I'd always had that stigma against therapy. So hearing that was such a catalyst for me to be like, whoa, it's not always that I need to fix things or like work through past things. It's like I'm also preparing myself to just have a healthier future and like better communication, And I think if anyone's like averse or has any like thoughts about going to therapy or like doing mindset work or like hiring a mindset coach or anything like that, is like try not to always think about it in the sense that it's like, oh, I need to fix something. But it's like, hey, I could take preventative action. It's like fitness, right? Like so many people like wait until they're unhappy with their body to take action. It's like, what if we prevent that from happening and you feel confident in advance and you have good self-perception and good self-image, and you don't get diabetes because you actually worked out and like you ate well, growing up.
Starting now.
Yeah. And I think like my biggest takeaway this last year has really been to take more preventative action ahead of time and have that toolkit for any part of my life, not just mindset work, but even like things with business and troubleshooting things and with my fitness, right? It's like having the education to where it's like, okay, if I go to a holiday dinner, I know how to be mindful because I learned, and I have in my toolkit how to track macros, or like I know what macros are, what meals are composed of, and just different things like that, So I think my biggest takeaway this year from just doing that work and like also learning more about it and like just the human psyche in general, which I'm like obsessed with. I think that's just been like a big thing for me too.
And that's huge. I've never thought about it that way, actually. Just being better prepared, and then the knowledge you use is absolutely huge. And I've said it a million times, like fitness really is the gateway to success. It teaches you all the principles and fundamentals that you need to know to be successful. And then from there, you just dive in, and it just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. Like it never really ends. And we always say like there's levels to things. There's levels to literally everything. And we're finding out recently, you just dove into such a bigger mentorship this year, and there's levels to that as well. Being young, being 22, you're 23, and just like, taking these risks and diving into these mentorships, it's a different ball game. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around it sometimes, because I remember making the investment with Zach or even with you, it's just like, okay, damn, this is hefty. But it really just comes down like, do you believe in yourself or not? Yeah. And when you do, good things happen. When the commitments do line up with the work and that lines up with your heart, amazing freaking things happen. And we always like joked around saying that we do have that chip on our shoulder, but I'm kind of glad that we do, because I hope that we are setting a good example for younger kids coming up, people that are 16, 17, 18. I mean, I would love to think that I am setting an example, is thinking that, you don't have to be 30 years old to do whatever you want in your life, or 40, or, you can really kind of step out of those supposed tos and do whatever the heck you want to do versus what you think you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Like this, it's so funny that you just mentioned this, because this brought me back to one specific time I want to share is, I bought my properties, like I was 20 when I bought my first condo here in California, and nobody took me seriously, to the point where like I couldn't get a loan at first, because they were like, oh, you only have 21 months in business, but you're also like, age was never the factor, but like nobody would actually approach me. I went through 2 realtors before I finally found James, who's like one of our friends who's so awesome, and he's like, no, we're gonna get you approved for this. And like, kid you not, like we have to be the change, because I walked into my lender's office and I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't care if I'm young. I don't care if you don't take me seriously. Like, I need a lender, and like, I need you to help me. And James wasn't even with me. I was like, I'm going alone. I'm gonna make this happen. Like, I was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this thing. And like, you have to stand your ground. Like, being young, if an older generation doesn't take you seriously, like, let that chip on your shoulder if you have one. Like, honestly, sometimes if it's the ego thing, we say egos sometimes has a negative connotation, but sometimes it's the best thing that you could possibly bring forth in your toolkit to actually get what you need in life. And I think for me, like, that was the biggest thing, where I was like, again, having that toolkit, just being like, I need this to be confident. And like, we are shifting a paradigm, right? I talked about this too with just even like gender. It's like, there are a lot of women in the coaching space making a lot of money, right? And it's a shift in paradigm, because we have that ceiling, right? Where it's like, okay, or the gap where it's like, that's a shift in paradigm. But it's also like, hey, there are young people who are freaking crushing it. Like, there are 18 and 19-year-olds who are multimillionaires now. I looked at some of the people at, in Nick's trading group that are like 18 who are making like millions of dollars a month. And I'm like, holy crap, And it's just like, watch out, because like they're coming, and like we're coming, and it's just like, we're innovative, we're new. And like, I think that's the most incredible thing about being this young, is like, we are willing to go after what we want. And again, it's just like, watch out, because like, another thing I'll say is, it's so funny, I'm gonna reference TikTok, but TikTok teaches me so much. But it's like, I've been seeing this thing where it's like, be careful about the younger generation, because they know what they want and they're gonna work for it. They're gonna be innovative. So like, they will just walk into your office and quit one day. I'm like, that is so true. I'm like, that is so true, because we're gonna utilize the resources that we have nowadays that we didn't have back in, even 10, 15 years ago. Like, we wouldn't be doing this 10, 15 years ago, right? Like, it wasn't really a thing. And like, now we have all these resources to utilize. So just, like, use that, step into your power, and make you confident,
It's funny that you say that. I can think of like multiple people off the TikTok reference that, got frustrated in some type of way, called up their job on the spot. You're like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not coming in. Like, I'm done working for you. And it's ballsy. People don't really just do that too often. And I mean, one I can think of right away is Jose. There was one time he was thinking about coaching, and his full-time job, he had too many calls. You're just like, okay, looks like I'm not coming into work. Like, when you know what it is the heck you want, and there's something about this generation where everybody's just a menace and just like knows what they want and does not care, they're just going to go for it. And I mean, it's great to see, because I think like, what is this generation going to bring within the next couple of years? Because it's what's going on right now, these past couple of years, is not traditional. And especially with, this entire pandemic and everything that's been going on, and everything closing, like, it's honestly like raised the roof of what people like really have potential to do. People have been getting creative. People have been stepping out of their comfort zones, and young kids too. Like you said, there's 19, 18-year-olds out there just trading and making millions monthly. So it's wild to see. I really don't know what's going to come of it, but things are changing fast, and there's really not much you can do about it. I don't know. You can either hop on the wave and like tag along, or you can kind of just sit and just hope things are, don't pick up too fast for you.
Right. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just like, you don't have to go a traditional route. And that's like the biggest thing for me that I've learned you know, as I'm kind of a stickler on like the education system, because I'm like, yeah, it's definitely like something we need. But at the same time, it's like, just don't feel confined into a box or feel like you have to live for your parents, especially because I felt like for me, that was always something that pushed me to a certain path, and I was great with school. I was really good at it. I also suck at test taking because I have ADHD. So like I wasn't really going to get that far, you know, and I was like, this is just not for me. And yeah, it's just break traditions, you know. I think if anything, like that's what our younger generation is doing, and that's what we need to keep doing.
I love it. This entire conversation has been freaking awesome, and it's exactly everything that I would hope to talk to you about. I mean, we dove a little bit into spirituality, into our age, into our ego, into all the things that are pretty much just arising in our life. I mean, I've known you for such a short time, and it's honestly been a blessing, you and Nick, a blessing in mine and Ivana's life. And there's honestly just so much more that we're going to be building. And I'm excited to see just where these next couple of years really take us, because, I mean, there's really no predicting. There is, in a sense, like we have the power to choose like what we want to do, but there's also no predicting, because I don't know how I'm going to be thinking in 3 months. I don't know how I'm going to be thinking in 6 months. I'm going to be a completely different person in a year from now. So I'm excited. Is there any last things you would love to just dive into or just share?
I think the only thing I'll say is like, and this is something we've tackled, this is short, but big piece of advice is like, just because everyone the same age as you is going and doing things and you feel like a baby grandma, or, you know, you feel like you go to bed early or you wake up early, it doesn't make you weird. And that's okay. And I think it's just not taking that judgment or taking that heat is the most important thing.
No, 100%. If you surround yourself with the right people, they're going to totally understand that. They're not going to judge you. And, you know, everything unfolds the way it's supposed to when, you know, you're aligned with yourself. Once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. If you're hearing this on iTunes or any other podcasts, make sure to check us out on YouTube as well. There is going to be a video version. And if you're not following Kendall already, make sure to follow her at...
You guys can find me on Instagram mainly. It's just Fearstofit, so Fearstofit. I also have a podcast as well, which is the Strive for Strength podcast.
Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.